Australian government will be implementing additional precautionary border security measures in order to protect Australians whilst more is learnt about the nature and impact of the Omicron variant of concern.
Tonight, breaking news, the new COVID-19 variant detected in more countries as the WHO names it Omicron. Travel restrictions imposed on southern Africa, both here at home and overseas, of what's now been labelled a variant of concern. It's Sunday, the 28th of November. You're watching 6 News also tonight.
If anybody thinks that we are going to be distracted or intimidated by tinfoil hat wearing tossers sitting in their parents' basements in Florida, then you do not know us Territorians.
NT authorities slam so-called tinfoil hat-wearing tossers over reports that Aboriginal people are being forcibly removed from their homes and taken to enforced quarantine. The claim spreading overseas, but some are missing basic facts about who's who in Australian politics. And the world reacts to Pat Cummins being appointed Australia's Test cricket captain with Steve Smith as his deputy, as Tim Payne announces he'll be taking a leave of absence from all cricket after his resignation last week. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Later this hour, Peter Dutton announces that Australia intends to build military capacity in response to China-Taiwan tensions. The Defence Minister talking of dark clouds in the region. But first tonight, for less than a day, we knew it as new, but now the Omicron COVID-19 variant is causing concern right across the globe. Travel restrictions have been imposed by the US, Canada and Europe, and now Australia is following, banning all non-citizens. The WHO has now labelled the B11529 strain a variant of concern and warned it poses an increased risk of reinfection compared with other variants. It comes as Australia tries to slowly reopen ahead of Christmas in just under a month's time, but what impact could this new variant have? Reporter Lincoln Holmes begins our special coverage.
Just as we thought life was returning to normal, a new COVID variant is causing concern right across the globe.
Early analysis show that this variant has a large number of mutations that require and will undergo further study. It will take a few weeks for us to understand what impact this variant has.
It's called Omicron, and it was first discovered in southern Africa. The country's health minister said scientists were concerned about it due to its high number of mutations and how quickly it spreads among young people. South Africa's daily cases have been rising, and officials believe that's due to the new variant. The World Health Organization says viruses do evolve over time, but when its ability to spread or cause serious illness changes, that's when it starts to be labelled as a variant of concern. It's feared this variant could be more transmissible.
We do know that it does contain a large number of mutations. It is quite different to previous variants that we have been watching.
Health experts say that the world should remain cautious, with not much known about Omicron at this time and how it reacts to vaccines. Already cases have been confirmed in several countries outside of Africa, including Hong Kong, England and Italy. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says anyone arriving into the UK will now be asked to take a PCR test on the second day and must isolate until they get a negative test result.
If you're boosted, your response is likely to be stronger. So it's more vital than ever that people get their jabs and we get those boosters into arms as fast as possible.
Israel has closed its border to all foreigners for 2 weeks, and the European Union has announced travel restrictions for multiple countries, with the US and Canada also doing the same.
It is now important that all of us in Europe act very swiftly, decisively and united.
Yesterday afternoon, Australian health officials announced their own measures.
The Australian government will be implementing additional precautionary border security measures in order to protect Australians whilst more is learnt about the nature and impact of the Omicron variant of concern. These countries are South Africa, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Lesotho, Eswatini, the Seychelles, Malawi and Mozambique.
Any non-Australian citizens who have been in any of these 9 countries cannot enter Australia, and citizens who have been there over the past 2 weeks need to enter 14 days quarantine. Victoria late last night announced anyone who is fully vaccinated and arriving from any other country will need to quarantine at home for at least 3 days. Even with new measures in place, some fear it's too late to stop the spread, And the hope now is that vaccines will be able to contain it.
Another day, another challenge. We'll get through this.
I know you said you wouldn't rule anything in or out, but can you just give the people at home some hope that everyone's worried about a lockdown? This is, whatever progression this takes over the next couple of months, can you at least say there will no longer be a lockdown in Australia?
I think I've answered that question.
Professor,
Thank you.
On the details of the variant, Professor.
Lincoln Holmes, 6 News.
Omicron is now the fifth major COVID-19 variant to be announced. In addition to SARS-CoV-2, the original variant of COVID, there's also the Alpha variant, first found in London and other parts of the UK, the Beta variant, discovered in South Africa, just like Omicron, the Gamma variant, discovered in Brazil, and of course the Delta variant, discovered in India. Now here's a chart with all other Greek letters, including some that haven't been used for variants or ones that have only been labelled variants that aren't variants are concerned by the WHO. Currently remaining include Sigma, Psi and Omega. Well, thousands of people have again protested in Melbourne CBD. What began a few weeks ago as a demonstration against the proposed pandemic bill the Victorian government is right now trying to introduce has now led to rallies nationwide with concern in general over mandatory vaccines and COVID-19 restrictions. COVID-19 cases in Victoria are remaining relatively steady, with 9 in 10 eligible Victorians, that's 12 plus, now fully vaccinated. Now, many of those protesters have also said, both at the rallies and on social media, that they won't be voting for either of the major parties again. New data from Small Business Australia given to Sky News shows that 40% of business owners put most of their trust into parties that aren't Labor or the Liberals. The Victoria's Party now plans to stand at every seat in the next state election in 1 year's time, with one of the party's founding members telling 3AW Radio that voters want a new voice in politics.
We're a central party, so we're not left or right, and we've got no party affiliations. We haven't done any deals. I can tell your listeners right now, in terms of being transparent, we're definitely not going to do any deals. We're not interested in doing deals. So this party is really about being transparent. It's about being a party for the people. It's a party that's going to represent the people, but it's elected by the people, and we're hoping that our members will shape the party going forward.
It also follows that announcement earlier this week where the Liberal Democrats and United Australia Party announced they'd be doing a preference deal for the 2022 federal election. The NT Chief Minister slammed, in his own words, tinfoil hat-wearing tossers over claims that Aboriginal people are being forcibly removed from their homes and taken to enforced quarantine in Howard Springs. The Aboriginal Medical Services Alliance Northern Territory says those claims, which have been blamed on overseas groups, are false, and that the Army has not been carrying weapons, they've been carrying fresh food.
We are trying to protect the oldest continuous living culture on the planet. We have tens of thousands of years of history, law, custom and song to keep alive. And if anybody thinks that we are going to be distracted or intimidated by tinfoil hat wearing tossers sitting in their parents' basements in Florida, then you do not know us Territorians.
Now, as we've mentioned many times before, people have been blaming the federal government for lockdowns this year, or claiming state leaders are national leaders. So we've put together a bit of a comprehensive guide on who our premiers, health ministers and chief health or medical officers are, just to make sure people get the basics right if they're overseas. Now, let's start on a federal level. The Prime Minister is Scott Morrison from the Liberal Party, which for Australia is a centre-right party. The Federal Health Minister is Greg Hunt, and the Chief Medical Officer is Professor Paul Kelly. On a state level, Anastasia Palaszczuk is the Queensland Labor Premier, Yvette Darth is the Health Minister, and John Gerard is the Chief Health Officer, though throughout most of the pandemic it was Jeanette Young until she became the state's Governor. Dominic Perrottet is the New South Wales Liberal Premier, taking over from Gladys Berejiklian, who resigned in October. Brad Hazzard is the Health Minister and Kerry Chant is the Chief Health Officer. Labor's Andrew Barr is the Australian Capital Territory, or ACT, Chief Minister, which is treated very similar to a state, unlike what a US territory might be. Rachel Stephen-Smith is the Health Minister and Karen Coleman is the CHO. In Victoria, there's Labor Premier Dan Andrews, Health Minister Martin Foley and Chief Health Officer Brett Sutton. Tasmania's Liberal Premier is Peter Gutwin, Health Minister is Jeremy Rockcliffe and Chief Medical Officer is Tony Lawler. South Australian Premier Stephen Marshall is from the Liberal Party and so is the Health Minister Stephen Wade. We've also got the Chief Public Health Officer Nicola Spurrer. WA has Labor Premier Mark McGowan, Health Minister Roger Cook and Chief Health Officer Andrew Robertson. And as we just mentioned, the Northern Territory has Labor Chief Minister Michael Gunner, Health Minister Natasha Files and Chief Health Officer Hugh Heggie. So if you've seen correct claims about who's who here in Australia, share the link to this report available right here on YouTube and on our website 6newsau.com as well. Well, meanwhile, New South Wales has been encouraged to keep dining and discovering, with residents set to receive 2 additional $25 vouchers. The state's treasurer says more than 15,000 businesses and 4.8 million customers have already registered for the program, which began as a way to kickstart the economy. It's a welcome boost for businesses and families heading into summer, with restrictions, including around mandatory mask wearing, set to ease next month. Reporter Christian Penny has more from Sydney.
The New South Wales Dine and Discover program got a boost today, with residents set to receive 2 additional $25 Dine and Discover vouchers. New customers can also now apply for 6 vouchers worth $250 to redeem at businesses. The program launched last year to kickstart the state's economy. It was well received and popular among residents. New South Wales Treasurer Matt Kean saying more than 15,000 businesses and 4.8 million customers have already registered for the Dine and Discover program, with almost $276 million in vouchers used so far. With restrictions almost non-existent and mandatory mask restrictions set to ease in December, it's a welcome boost for businesses and families headed into summer. The vouchers can be used at businesses including water parks, museums, cafes and restaurants. Minister for Digital and Customer Service Victor Dominello said accessing the new vouchers would be simple and available in the palm of your hand. Vouchers are commonly accessed via smartphone, though non-digital customers should contact Service New South Wales to nominate their preferred service centre so they can collect paper vouchers. The vouchers have been extended and expire after June 30 next year.
And to find out more on this story, go to 6newsau.com, where we've got a full article on the Dine and Discover program. We'll change pace now, and Peter Dutton has announced that Australia intends to build military capacity in response to China-Taiwan tensions. The Defence Minister spoke at the National Press Club of Dark Clouds in the region, warning Beijing will seize other territories if it successfully invades Taiwan, though he doesn't believe China wants to occupy Australia or other countries in the region. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy said the speech was fanning conflict and division, and claimed Dutton continued preaching his misunderstanding of China's foreign policy, distorting China's efforts to safeguard sovereignty and territorial integrity. Overseas now, a Kurdish woman has become the first victim identified following the disaster in the Channel, where more than 24 people died in a mass drowning. Mayam Nuri Muhammad Amin was one of 27 people who died attempting to cross into Britain. The death toll made up of 17 men, 7 women, including her, and 3 children, with just 2 survivors. Her fiancé told the BBC she was messaging him as the dinghy she was on started deflating. He says she was on board with a female relative. It is the biggest loss of life by drowning in the Channel in several years. US Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert has apologised after a video emerged of her making comments about Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar. Omar, who is Muslim, slammed the video as bigotry and said the story Boebert told wasn't actually true. Here's some of what she had to say when apparently addressing a group of supporters.
I was getting into an elevator with one of my staffers, and we get in the elevator and I see a Capitol Police officer running hurriedly to the elevator. I see fret all over his face, and he's reaching, and I'm like, "What? The door's shutting. Like I can't open it. Like what's happening?" I look to my left, and there she is, Ilhan Omar. Oops. And I said, "Well, she doesn't have a backpack. We should be fine." So we only had one floor to go, and I was like, do I say it? Do I not? I looked over, and I said, oh, look, the Jihad Squad decided to show up for work today.
Now on Twitter, Bo Burt wrote that she apologises to anyone in the Muslim community she offended with my comment about Rep Omar. I have reached out to her office to speak with her directly. There are plenty of policy differences to focus on without this unnecessary distraction. The video of her has racked up around 5 million views on Twitter alone. Australians have been tipped to spend more than $5 billion over both Black Friday and Cyber Monday. What began in America to follow Thanksgiving has gone global, with Aussie retailers slashing in-store and online prices. The Australian Retailers Association and Roy Morgan now predicts $5.4 billion will be spent over a 4-day period. That is a record, but consumer groups like Choice are warning customers to be careful, and according to the ABC, people should look at the terms and conditions carefully. So have you been spending big over the weekend or are planning to? Let us know in the comments by using hashtag 6newsau or email us contact@6newsau.com. Well, to sport now, and the cricket world is reacting after Pat Cummins was announced as Australia's new Test captain and, more controversially, Steve Smith as vice captain. Now, Smith resigned from the captaincy in 2018 over the ball tampering saga and did not return to international cricket until 2019. The move has divided some fans, but Cummins says he insisted Smith be his deputy as the first fast bowler to become Aussie skipper in over 50 years. Senior reporter Darby Travers has more.
Good evening. Well, Pat Cummins has officially been named as Australia's Test cricket captain following Tim Paine's resignation last week. Cummins is the first fast bowler in more than half a century to take on the role, but more controversial was the appointment of Steve Smith as the vice captain. Smith resigned as skipper back in 2018 when he admitted that the leadership group of the team he was a part of discussed ball tampering during a match. Some online say Smith shouldn't have the role and doesn't deserve it after what he did, while others say he deserves a second chance.
There'll be some negativity from some people around it. I understand that and I get that. But for me, I know that I've grown a great deal.
Also in sport, the Matildas have lost 3-0 to Team USA in the first of two being played on home soil. Australia conceded a goal early before the Americans kicked 2 further goals to win the match being played in Sydney. The next game is set to be played in Newcastle. And finally, St Kilda has announced they are reducing their debit by almost $4.3 million amid financial pressures throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. The AFL club has now revealed their financial result for the year, showcasing an operating profit of $3.6 million. Saints CEO Matt Finnis said that's partly due to the rise in membership. And that is the latest in sport for this Sunday. For now, though, it's back to you.
Well, researchers have created a so-called super jelly that can withstand the equivalent of an elephant standing on it or being run over by a car and still recover to its original shape. The material was developed at the University of Cambridge and it does look and feel like a jelly. It's believed that it could be used for a wide range of things, including soft robotics, bioelectronics, or even as a cartilage replacement for biomedical use. And now is Arvin and Sarah with a look at what's coming up later tonight on WAMN News.
Thanks, Leo. Tonight on WAMN News, can a new variant halt WA's border reopening plans? An exclusive discussion with medical experts on what's next before Christmas.
New revelations on Marlon John's tragic death revealed by WAMN News sparked questions in Parliament. We have exclusive reactions from the victim's mother.
Plus, what can be done to prevent domestic violence? A one-on-one interview with Women's Interest Minister Simone McGurk. Plus, Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
Join us tonight on the WAMN News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
All right, thanks both Arvin and Sarah there. Now tomorrow's forecast right across the country. Brisbane, a chance of showers, 25 degrees, 19 in Sydney, 20 degrees and partly cloudy in Canberra, 26 degrees in Melbourne, 19 in Hobart, 25 and sunny in Adelaide, 32 degrees in Alice Springs, 26 in Perth, and in Darwin a warm top of 34. And finally tonight, something we're not usually known for, a brief correction. Now, last Sunday had a bit of a slip of the tongue where I stated that Australia's only nationwide lockdown was in 2022 instead of 2020. Now, a few people have pointed that out, so I do apologise for fact-checking the future, but this is proof that when people point out stuff like this, we are happy to correct the record, and we'll do that on air too. And you can read that full report from last week on our YouTube channel or our website right now. And that is 6 News for this Sunday evening. You can stay up to date with the latest headlines by heading to our website, 6newsau.com, and by following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Lit. Just search 6newsau to find us. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.